my determination was more important than talent early on.
Most drummers chase speed. Neil Peart chased meaning. For decades, he built rhythms that felt like architecture, precise, layered, and endlessly deliberate. Behind the kit of Rush, he didn't just keep time, he bent it. But greatness for Peart was never a mirror. He studied it in others, in jazz clubs, in records played alone at night. He listened harder than most people practice. And when he named the drummers who moved him, it wasn't flattery, it was philosophy. He didn't hand out praise lightly. Every name came with a reason, a lesson absorbed, a boundary redrawn. If something in this film strikes a nerve, share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories where rhythm meets legacy. These are the drummers Neil Peart held above the rest, and what they taught him about the instrument he gave his life to. Number 8, Phil Collins. He saw him play once, and it echoed for decades. Before the pop stardom, Phil Collins was a progressive drummer of staggering range, and Neil Peart was paying close attention. In the summer of 1974, just before joining Rush, Peart attended a Genesis concert supporting the Selling England by the Pound tour. What he witnessed was not spectacle, it was architecture, drumming that served the composition while quietly commanding everything around it. Collins played with a fluidity that made complexity feel inevitable, every fill landing where the music needed weight. Peart once said, "Phil Collins was an enormous influence on my drumming in the 70s. That admiration never faded. What struck Peart most was the range. Collins could shift from intricate progressive passages to raw emotional delivery without losing control. His vocal turn on More Fool Me hinted at a second career. But behind the kit, he was already complete. Before Collins became a voice, he was a force, and Peart never stopped hearing the echoes of that single night. Number 7, Nick Mason. Simplicity in the wrong hands is just absence. In Nick Mason's hands, it was taste. As Pink Floyd's founding drummer, Mason never overwhelmed a song, he inhabited it. His approach was the opposite of excess. Where other drummers filled space, Mason curated it, placing each beat with the restraint of someone who understood that silence carries its own rhythm. From the pulse of money to the atmospheric drift of echoes, his drumming became inseparable from Pink Floyd's identity. Not because it demanded attention, but because it earned trust. Peart once said, "Nick Mason has a very simplistic yet ultra-tasteful style, always the right thing in the right place." That observation reveals as much about Peart as it does about Mason. Even a drummer celebrated for complexity recognized the power of economy. Knowing when not to play became as important as knowing how. Mason never competed with the music, he protected it, and in that restraint, Peart found a lesson louder than any solo. Number 6, Bill Bruford. He pounded a cash register in time with this man's records. Before Rush, a young Peart stood behind the counter of a London souvenir shop, drumming along to Yes albums on a Sueda register. It was 1971. Peart was 19, broke, and living in London with nothing but ambition and a pair of restless hands. Bill Bruford's drumming on time and a word in the Yes album became his daily education. Intricate, unpredictable, built on jazz instincts wrapped inside progressive rock. Every shift in time signature felt like a dare, and Peart accepted each one from behind that counter. Peart once said, "Bill Bruford's playing on Yes's first 5 albums was a strong influence on me in the early 70s. What made Bruford different was refusal. He refused to repeat himself, refused to settle into comfort. His patterns challenged the listener to keep up rather than lean back. Peart absorbed that restlessness and carried it into Rush, the belief that rhythm should provoke, not simply support. Bruford didn't just influence Peart's hands, he rewired his expectations of what a drummer could demand from a song. Number 5, Michael Shrieve. He was barely out of his teens when he played the solo that stopped Woodstock. Michael Shrieve's eruption on Soul Sacrifice with Santana was not just a performance, it was an announcement. Peart was in early cover bands when Santana's debut arrived, and the timing was perfect. Shrieve had taken jazz vocabulary, fluid, responsive, conversational, and planted it inside Latin rock with an intensity that felt both ancient and electric. The result was drumming that breathed, shifted, and never sat still. Peart recognized it immediately as something new. Peart once said, "The style that you really pioneered, that you adapted from those beautiful sources into those first few Santana albums, moved me." The impact was direct. Peart began playing drum solos in his own band modeled on Shrieve's approach. Snares off, instinct leading, rhythm treated as dialogue rather than decoration. It was liberation disguised as technique, and it opened a door Peart would never close. Shrieve proved that youth was no barrier to authority, and Peart learned that conviction, not experience, is what makes a solo unforgettable. Number 4, Keith Moon. Stamina. That was the word that followed Peart out of the concert hall. He was 17 when he saw The Who perform live, and what Keith Moon delivered that night was a controlled demolition. Moon did not play drums the way other musicians did. He attacked them, reckless, relentless, and completely committed. Every fill was an explosion, every song a war between chaos and momentum. There was no economy in his style, no restraint, just pure, unfiltered force delivered with a grin and a fury that made the stage feel too small. Peart once recalled, "One of the guys said, 'Do you think you could ever have that kind of stamina?' I said, 'I don't know.'" He laughed about it for years, but the question lingered. Moon's endurance was not just physical, it was philosophical. He played as though every song might be his last, pouring everything into every second. Peart carried that urgency forward, understanding that commitment is not something you measure, it is something you feel. Moon didn't play to impress, he played to survive, and Peart never forgot the difference. Number 3, Mitch Mitchell. One Saturday morning changed everything. During a drum lesson, Peart's teacher placed a record on the turntable and said 4 words. "This changes everything." It was Jimi Hendrix's "Are You Experienced?" Behind that record was Mitch Mitchell, playing with an artful unpredictability that made jazz and rock feel like the same language. Mitchell did not follow the guitar, he circled it, weaving around Hendrix's chaos with a fluidity that felt both instinctive and precise. Every fill was a conversation, every rhythm a response to something unspoken. Peart once recalled, "My teacher played a record, then told me, 'This changes everything.' It was Hendrix, with Mitch Mitchell's artful and innovative drumming. That moment redefined what Peart believed drums could do inside a song. Mitchell proved that the kit was not a foundation. It was a voice, equal, reactive, alive. His playing gave Peart permission to think of rhythm as expression rather than obligation, and that shift never reversed. Mitchell did not support the music, he challenged it. And in that challenge, Peart found the courage to do the same. Number 2, Gene Krupa. Before the sticks, there was a screen. Neil Peart's desire to play drums did not begin in a rehearsal room. It began in a darkened theater, watching the Gene Krupa story somewhere around the age of 11. Sal Mineo's portrayal of Krupa lit something that never went out. The film made drumming look exciting, glamorous, elegant, and dangerous, all at once. It was not about technique, it was about identity. For the first time, Peart saw the drummer not as a background figure, but as the center of the story. That single image planted the seed for everything that followed. Peart once said, "The film's dramatization of his life managed to make the idea of being a drummer seem exciting, glamorous, elegant, and dangerous." Krupa was more than an origin point. He was the first drummer to turn the kit into a lead instrument, to demand the spotlight rather than wait for it. Peart understood that ambition deeply, the belief that rhythm deserves the front of the stage, not just the back. Krupa did not just inspire Peart to play, he gave him permission to believe the drums could matter most. Number 1, Buddy Rich. There are all the great drummers in the world, and then there is Buddy Rich. Those were not Peart's words, they belonged to Gene Krupa. But Peart adopted the sentiment as gospel. For Peart, Rich existed beyond comparison. His speed was inhuman, his precision surgical. But what separated him was totality. The ability to command every dimension of the instrument simultaneously, as though the kit were an extension of thought itself. Rich did not perform drumming, he embodied it, with a ferocity that made mastery look involuntary. Peart once quoted Krupa's words about Rich, the greatest drummer ever to have drawn breath. He carried that belief his entire life. That reverence was not passive. In 1994, Peart produced Burning for Buddy, a 2-volume tribute album featuring the Buddy Rich Big Band, alongside some of the finest drummers alive. It was not nostalgia, it was a declaration, proof that Rich's music still demanded the room, still challenged every player brave enough to sit behind it. Rich was not just Peart's greatest influence, he was the standard against which Peart measured everything, including himself. These were not casual choices, they were confessions. Each drummer Neil Peart named carried a lesson he never outgrew, about restraint, about courage, about what rhythm owes to the listener. Together, they trace a lineage where jazz meets rock, where instinct meets architecture, and where mastery is measured not in speed, but in intent. Peart never stopped learning. Even at the height of his own legend, he returned to these voices, not to imitate, but to remember why he started. That humility is what made him more than a technician. It made him a student for life, and that is rarer than any gift. Long after the solos fade, the lessons remain. Not in the hands, but in the ear. In the discipline to listen before you play. If one of these drummers shaped your own journey, share the story in the comments, and subscribe for more moments where music history still resonates.